Our senior national security analyst, Juan Zarate, has been covering the day's developments from Washington, and he joins me now on the phone. Juan, you've been listening to the conversation that Jeff Pegues had with the former deputy director of the CIA, Michael Morrell, and some chilling words at the end of that discussion where Director Morrell says that this is almost certain to happen once again. What can we do to prevent that?
Well, they are chilling remarks, but certainly something that counterterrorism officials in the United States and elsewhere in the West have been concerned about, the increasing pace and capability of ISIS not only to direct attacks, but to inspire them. I think there are a few things that can be done. I think there are things that can be done overseas, continuing to pressure ISIS where they exist and where they are plotting and planning and able to train individuals, and so avoiding the possibility that ISIS can use Raqqa, for example, their capital, or control of Mosul, the second largest city in Iraq, as a place where they can plot and plan and deploy operatives becomes incredibly important. I think countering their ability to not only send operatives into the West, but also to inspire becomes important. That takes a lot of good intelligence work. It also takes a lot of spade work in terms of determining which individuals are proving more problematic and are quickening their pace to deployment. There are going to be a lot of questions about that with respect to Mateen, since he was on the radar screen of the FBI. And then finally, finding ways of countering the ideology itself. And this will take the help of American Muslims and Muslim communities around the world to continue to try to undermine the attractiveness and the heroic narrative of ISIS and al-Qaeda. Because the reality is ISIS has drawn 40,000 recruits from around the world to its cause. It's obviously been able to attack in the West. And I think what Mike Morrell has said is a reflection of that reality, that the numbers are not on our side, and certainly the ability to lock down and open societies is quite limited. And so we are likely to see these kinds of events with committed actors who've been either trained or are committed to attack fellow citizens.
Juan, I want to also focus on something else that Director Morrell said to Jeff, which was in the way that ISIS may have perhaps either directed or inspired this attack. Again, for our viewers, give us a sense of what the distinctions are and what do you make of this announcement from the Islamic State that there is some level of connection there?
Well, we'll have to see how much of a connection there actually is between ISIS and this individual. Certainly, we know that this individual proclaimed his allegiance, which is significant, as Mike pointed out, and ISIS laying claim to him suggests that they have a degree of confidence that they at least know that this individual was committed to their cause. ISIS is not flippant about laying claim to attacks. They won't lay claim to attacks that they have no touch point to. And so that's significant if that can be authenticated. But the reality is ISIS and al-Qaeda before it have been trying to do something quite different, which is to say we may not be able to infiltrate a dozen individuals to perpetrate a mass casualty attack, but we can try to do that, plus try to inspire individuals in places like Orlando or San Bernardino or elsewhere to attack however and whenever they can against fellow citizens. And though that may not be directed, it may not be that the command and control came out of Raqqa directly, the fact is that they are inspiring individuals to take on their agenda and to take on their violent methodology. And if that's the case, though we talk about directed versus inspired, you begin to see a blending of the two. And for all intents and purposes, this was a horrific terrorist attack inspired by ISIS at a minimum. If directed, certainly strategically relevant, but at the end of the day, strategically relevant anyway, because we now have the worst mass casualty event in U.S. history at the hands of somebody who's subscribed to the ISIS ideology. We've now doubled the number of Americans who've been killed since 9/11 as a result of terrorism. And we have a tragic day in American history. All of that, if it comes at the hands of ISIS, whether directed or inspired, is a bad day for us, and in their eyes, a very good day for the terrorists.
And Juan, we know that ISIS has called for attacks on the West during the holy month of Ramadan. I'm sure a lot of people would not find the killing of innocent people to be at all holy. But what do you make of this timing?
Well, there are three issues about the timing. One, to your point, has to do with ISIS continually trying to inspire its followers, its adherents to attack, in particular during the holy month of Ramadan, but at any time there's an opportunity. And so the fact is they're trying to spur followers through social media, through their publications, through their operatives to attack whenever possible, and certainly during Ramadan if that opportunity presents itself. Secondly, they have attacked a gay bar and site. This is something important for them ideologically and theologically. The very idea of Western pluralism and Western liberal values are something that this group attacks and sees as a threat. And so that is important as well. And to the extent that there are gay pride celebrations, that may be something that this group and their adherents key toward. And then finally, you have the fact that they are engaged in some very fierce battles on the ground in Iraq and Syria, fighting for territory and in some places fighting for their lives. And so ISIS wants to shift the battle lines, wants to present as much complication and conflict for Western countries in Western societies as possible. And so they're going to try to accelerate as much mayhem and terror in Western streets whenever they can.
And finally, Juan, we've learned that the FBI investigated the gunman twice, once in 2013 for making inflammatory remarks of a terrorist nature, and then in 2014 again when it was suspected that he had ties to a known suicide bomber. Is this a failure, the fact that he was cleared of those activities?
I wouldn't call it a failure. We have to see what was done in terms of the checks and what contacts that were actually had between the gunman today and Monir Abu Salah. That was a significant point of contact, given that Abu Salah had moved in and out of the United States, was from Florida, and was the first American suicide bomber in Syria. Any contact, even minimal, should have been taken very seriously, and there's no reason to doubt that the FBI didn't take it seriously. But we'll have to see how deeply they dug. And I think the reality here is that the FBI is caught between a rock and a hard place. There are very clear restrictions as to what the FBI can do. People's speech is not illegal. And if there isn't movement toward criminality, the FBI can't keep people on lists and can't follow them around. And finally, there are resource constraints. So even if this individual were considered a danger, there are investigations in 50 states, and it's very hard to keep tabs on everybody for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so the FBI is in a tough position. They often get criticized for overreach, for sting operations, but then they get criticized in cases like this where there was no apparent criminality, nothing to suggest a threat that was imminent, and yet something happened. And so we'll just have to see what the facts bear out, but it will suggest certainly inquiries as to what the FBI did and didn't do.
Absolutely, and that is a good point. Juan Zarate joining us with his analysis. Sir, we thank you as always.
Thank you, Vlad.